Carvana is going bankrupt, for real this time. On Wednesday of this week, Carvana's stock collapsed and its worst day ever on the market, falling over 40% and hitting a low of under $4 per share. Quite the drop from just a year and a half ago in August of 2021, where Carvana had hit an all-time high of over $360 per share. Now, I've talked about Carvana a lot on my channel. In fact, my best performing video ever is a Carvana video. So many of you who watch my channel consistently probably have a pretty good idea as to what led Carvana to where they are today. From their shady business practices to their non-existent profit margin to poor leadership, Carvana has been plagued with issues for a long time. And for many people who've been following this story, it wasn't really a matter of if Carvana was going to go bankrupt, it was simply a matter of when. And so in this video, that's exactly what we're going to be talking about, and I'm going to be breaking down the final straws that broke the camel's back and what some of the final tipping points were that led Carvana to their death. Now, it is important to note that as I'm recording this video, Carvana has not filed for bankruptcy yet, but it is the first time in the company's history that serious discussions are being had, both publicly and privately, regarding a restructuring and a bankruptcy proceeding. And I also want to apologize in advance because as I'm recording this, I am sick with what I think is the flu, so bear with me.
I can't go out. I'm sick.
Now, whenever it comes to the question of why is Carvana exploring the path of bankruptcy seriously, it really does come down to one problem, and that's debt. Carvana is in a ton of debt, $7 billion to be exact, and on Wednesday, a group of creditors who hold 70% of Carvana's total unsecured debt, totaling about $4 billion, came together to sign a deal binding them to act together in negotiations with the company. This is the creditors' way of basically saying, hey, we know that Carvana will and probably should file for bankruptcy, and we know that you guys feel the same way, so how about we all come together to make a deal that's good for everyone, rather than working on behalf of our own self-interests. And that is exactly what this agreement that was just signed this week is designed to do, and it lasts for 3 months, which means that these creditors believe that something's going to be happening sooner than later. And according to CNBC, these credit agreements are viewed as a way to streamline negotiations surrounding debt and restructuring and can help prevent fights during bankruptcy and restructuring proceedings. Now, of course, debt just doesn't happen. It doesn't appear out of thin air. And so to really understand why and how Carvana got to where they are today, you have to understand 2 key questions. Number 1, why is Carvana in so much debt? And number 2, why can't they pay it off? Now, I'm not going to go into a ton of details on any single issue in this video because there just simply isn't enough time. But if you're interested in learning about any of these different factors in more depth, I will include a series of videos that I've made throughout this year explaining this in a lot more detail. There will also be a playlist linked at the end of this video as well. Carvana has been plagued with problems for the better part of this year, and their most notable one is the issue of registering and titling vehicles that they've sold to customers. In fact, Carvana has had their dealer's license revoked in multiple states, the most recent one being Michigan. They're also under criminal investigation in Illinois and have been investigated in states like Texas, Florida, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, and more. The crux of the issue is that Carvana just simply doesn't file registration and title paperwork on time or accurately, and as a result, it puts customers in a really tough spot whenever they want to drive their car legally on the road, which they're not able to do without proper registration paperwork. This is definitely Carvana's biggest and most publicized problem, but it isn't the only reason why Carvana is where it is today. Another major issue that Carvana has that has absolutely led to this debt crisis is the unsustainable business model that Carvana practices. And the reality is that for every single car Carvana sells, they lose more and more money. Their margin is small, their overhead is through the roof, and they tried to widen this margin by purchasing ADESA auction house for $2.2 billion. But that effort predictably failed. We could also go into the overall leadership of Carvana as a company itself, which I certainly think is an issue with the company. To give you a really summarized explanation, Carvana was started by Drive Time Automotive, and it was essentially ran by a father-son duo for the last decade. The way the company was laid out made it so that this duo had significantly more power than other shareholders had, giving them an unbalanced amount of power even relative to their ownership. In fact, experts have described Carvana as being a publicly traded company ran like a family business with the best interests of the family at heart, which is ultimately caused by the extreme power that Ernie Garcia II and Ernie Garcia III have whenever it comes to the operations of Carvana. Now to the question of why can't Carvana pay off the $7 billion in debt that they've accumulated, and the answer to that question is the car market. Car prices are falling, which means that Carvana is having to sell cars at a significantly lower rate today than they had to this time last year, which means that the situation surrounding Carvana losing money off of each and every vehicle sold, that situation isn't getting better. In fact, it is getting much, much worse. And their profit margin is getting smaller, not wider. In fact, the car market dropped even lower this month to the lowest point we've seen in over a year. And the fact is, the numbers for Carvana just don't add up. I mentioned earlier that Carvana loses money off of each and every car that they sell. And the reality is that this was the case even during the hottest time to sell cars potentially in history, which was in 2021 and the beginning of 2022. 2021 and the beginning of 2022 welcomed record used car prices, and as a result, dealerships were showing record profits. And though Carvana was making a ton of revenue, they were still losing money each and every month, with the exception of one single quarter. If you can't make money in ideal market conditions, then you certainly aren't going to be able to do it in very poor market conditions. And this has unfortunately put Carvana in a really bad spot and left them at a dead end. This has left them unable to sell cars with enough margin to make a profit and pay off the debt. But of course, we have to ask the question, what next? I've been saying this for a while. I definitely could see Carvana being purchased by a bigger competitor. Who that would be and what that would look like, I certainly don't know the details too. But I absolutely would not be surprised if that happens in the next year or two, though I don't think that will be happening short term. Short term, Carvana will file for bankruptcy because the reality is they don't really have a whole lot of other options. But here's where the good news is for you, because with this bankruptcy will come inventory liquidations, which means that more and more cars will flood the used car market, increasing supply. The demand has already decreased with the recession, which means prices should fall significantly. As car buyers and consumers, Carvana bankruptcy could be a very, very good thing and something that's much needed for the market as a whole. As I mentioned at the beginning of this video, I think that something with this bankruptcy proceeding will happen within the next 3 months, so during the term of this agreement between the creditors. And I know I've been saying this a ton lately, and I probably will continue to say it through the end of the year. If you're in a position to buy a used car and you're able to wait a few months to make that purchase, I would absolutely encourage you to do that, at least until we can find out what ends up happening with Carvana. There is basically zero chance that car prices are going to go up significantly in the next 3 months, but there is also a very good chance that car prices could go down quite a bit. So if you can wait to buy that used car, I would absolutely encourage you to do so. But like always, you guys, I appreciate you watching this video. If you have any questions, comments, if you have anything to add, I would love to hear it. So make sure to leave a comment down below. And while you guys are at it, make sure to hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and hit that notification bell. And I will see you guys in the next video.